It's Lisa from Been There, Got Out. This is part two, and I'm welcoming back Sophora Acheson. She is a LMFT, licensed marriage and family therapist. And we started talking earlier about the power of community. There you are. Great. All right, let's see if this works. Our conversation, and I realized when I posted it, we were like less than 4 minutes in, and I felt like so much was covered. So hi again. I feel like we should just kind of start from the beginning, but so let's just do it. I think one of the first things I was wondering, especially because I always think the power of community in our community is for survivors of domestic violence. You got something completely different, which I think is more powerful in some ways. But mention a little bit about how important is community when it comes to healing, Sophora?
Yeah. So I think no matter what side of domestic violence you're on, whether if you're the victim or the person causing harm, it is essential to healing in all aspects of it. I know for me, community saved my life, as I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and I don't think I could have got through it mentally, physically, emotionally, any of that without community.
Yeah, yeah. So now, Sephora, just reintroduce yourself just in case and say who you are and what you do.
I know. I think we left off at a cliffhanger, literally. Instagram cut us off. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, as you said. I'm the CEO of Restorative Pathways, a large national organization here in the United States tackling domestic violence and human trafficking. And then personally, I'm a survivor of childhood abuse and domestic violence in adulthood. I'm married and have two children. And yeah, that's about it in a nutshell.
Yes, now let me see if we can remember the cliffhanger. I was telling you that our community is all dealing with abusive exes, specifically who use who weaponize the justice system to wear them down and bleed them dry financially, and thereafter basically terrorize them through a co-parenting relationship. So we provide all kinds of support for those victims. But the
Yes.
community that you're talking about is completely different. So tell us about that, because it
Yes.
certainly can impact this audience.
Yes. So, again, started about 10 years ago and me working in a domestic violence shelter and having my own experience going, wait a second, I think we're missing the other side of the puzzle for those who are causing harm, but really are stuck in a cycle. We're talking about people who actually do want to take accountability and change, not the evil people that have no empathy. Really, we were lacking in the field of helping these people. And so fast forward 10 years later, what we've brought into the United States is a program that's proven from New Zealand. And that's really a community, when you look at it, that is broken out into a residential house, community groups, and then outreach and restorative justice for them. And particularly in the houses where they very first see community. So they are being surrounded by their peers, with therapists, with advocates, and case managers. And it's really looking at how did they get here in the first place,
We're
which
talking
starts to,
about perpetrators.
we are
Just to be
talking
clear.
about perpetrators, yes. And as we know, somebody who is a victimizer, which is they used to be a victim and now they are an abuser, the reason why they often get there is because they're repeating a cycle or a pattern. A
Mhm.
lot of people who become abusers have had abuse done to them. And so we really get down to the root of why are you here? Why are you the toxic one in the relationship? And we don't hold back. There is no sugarcoating this, there is no BS. You have to talk about the harm that you've done. And then we really get into the shame around it, because shame is what keeps people stuck in patterns a lot of the time. And we know that from the substance use disorder world, we know that from the criminal justice world. And so we really brought that into our program and unpacking the shame around it so they can start actually taking an accountability and have some behavior change around it.
Yeah, and I know you said that there's a level of recidivism. So when somebody is abusive and because they
Yes.
keep repeating the cycle, if nothing intervenes and has them change, then it's
Yes.
just going to keep continuing. And I mean, think of how many people they impact. It's not just one victim, it's all of the ripple effects, children, intergenerational trauma,
Yes.
legal, the legal thing. And speaking of legal, so I had asked you, how could you even get people involved
Yes.
in this? Because you started off by saying people who want to take accountability. I'm thinking most people don't want
Right.
to. People who do that think that what they're doing is fine. So
Yeah.
tell us how you managed to get people into what your
Ah.
program.
So that was one thing that I was really nervous about. I'm like, oh my gosh, first, who's going to admit to this? Who's going to admit to they're the ones that are causing harm? And really, what it came down to is a lot of people came to us and said, look, I'm about to go to prison. Next time I get arrested for a DV, charge, prison it is. Or CPS said the next time that they come to my house, my children are, being taken. So they're facing typically some sort of legal consequence, and they're like, this is my last stop, like, you guys are it, can you help me? And it usually is a, can you help me figure out how to get out of this? Like, that's how it starts.
Uh-huh.
And we, ours is sure, and if you're going to be a part of this program, here's what getting out of this actually looks like. And
Uh-huh.
then we start rolling that out. A lot of people do get pretty upset in the beginning, and they are resistant. But when we start to breed empathy and have them look at the other person's situation and how they got to theirs, they start to connect the dots. They start to see, oh, wow, the harm that I am doing is pretty significant. And I'm either going to end up in jail, I'm going to lose my family, or I'm going to change. Like, those are the only options.
See, that's really interesting because I think often we have a mindset that people can't change. If that's an abuser, they're going to stay an abuser. If they were abusive to me, they're going to be abusive to our kids. And it's better just to keep us all away from that person. What do you think of that?
So I do think in some situations that's the case. If you were to ask me today, hey, Sophora, would you want to sit down with your father and go through this process? My answer would be absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that he can change. Unfortunately, that saddens my heart. Some people just aren't mentally, spiritually, emotionally there. But there are some people who are, and we have seen a significant amount of the community in domestic violence situations say, "What? How do I stop this? How do I get out of this?" They may not know how, what the tools are, what the work is that they have to do, but they know that there is pain deeply embedded in them. So the answer is yes, um, and it's also interesting to watch our clients who are on the victim side. Once their perpetrator has gone through a program, when we get to the restorative justice side, oftentimes people think restorative justice is the couple gets back together. And sometimes that is the case. Sometimes the couple does get back together. Oftentimes it's, how do we walk away from this not hating each other? How
Mm-hmm.
do we figure out how to co-parent together? Because while I don't want to be in a romantic relationship, the hurt goes too deep. We still have to figure out how to be in each other's lives. Ideally, that's what we're looking for. As we know, and very intimately, that's not always the case. But when that is an option, we want that to be there.
Yeah. So as you're supporting, let's say, a perpetrator to change, is there anything parallel going on with the survivor, like the other side of that couple?
Yes, absolutely. So we are still doing our traditional victim services, meaning we still have safe houses available. When they are able to stay in the home and we are able to remove the perpetrator, all of those services come into the home with them. Therapy, case management, working with the children, legal stuff, all of that happens inside the home with them. And we stay updated on their safety plan. Do they need to leave? Do they need to move? All of that. But there is parallel process going along with both sides of it.
Yeah. I was going to also say, are there certain indicators of someone who might be more successful in what you do versus someone that you just say, this isn't going to work?
Yeah. Um, First and foremost, I think people have to hit their quote unquote rock bottom,
Mm-hmm.
meaning they are like, my life has been so torn apart that I am willing to do whatever it takes to change. And sometimes it's, we had a client recently who he was going to get fired from his job. He was going to get fired from his career because, he had gotten into another fight at work. And so we are looking for areas where we can get into these people to start looking at the accountability and how their behavior is accompanying this. There are definitely people, and we have a screening process that looks at, the level of violence, and, how many times has this shown up in their life. And there are certain people that were like, there's mental health issues going on here and they need to address those first, or there is just truly a lack of empathy.
Mhm. What about timeline? So with this kind of program or treatment, is it like a standard amount of time, like 6 months to a year, or is it ongoing and it's hard to say how long it's going to take?
I mean, your typical stay is 6 months to a year, because
Okay.
the last thing that we want to do is rush this person back out into society without the right tools, and without the right behavior change. We know that community is so important, that, when they are surrounded by people holding them accountable and really helping them look at their own trauma, when we kind of pluck them out prematurely and put them on their own, they can slide back. And so it is typically 6 to 12 months, but it depends on where they're at in their journey.
Okay. I also was wondering what kinds of professionals are involved. Like if you can give me a day in the life of
Yeah.
someone in your program.
Yeah, so we do have licensed clinicians. However, they're specifically trained to work with these folks. So typically in the field, a lot of clinicians get very wary about working with people who have domestic violence charges, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of liability around that. And
Hmm.
so you have to be trained to really look at warning signs, to look at what is escalating them, and be able to tell really volatility kind of from a distance. So a day in the life is, the therapist is showing up early in the morning, they're checking in with the client. There's journal writing expected. We have group meetings, conflict resolution, and then we're looking at all of kind of the life stuff, right? Life stressors are what often, raise anger and raise stress in people's lives to where they start to act out. So teaching them how to manage life, like legal stuff that's coming up, what's going on with your job, do you have visitation with your kids, responsibilities that they have to manage on top of, looking at their own trauma.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm trying to jot down. I have like three questions at once. Uh,
Yeah.
so, in terms of the training that your clinicians have, I know I was talking to a behavioral analyst recently who was saying that it's really important for people who work with families dealing with this to have a background in anger management, like specifically in
Absolutely.
anger training. Does that, you agree with that too?
Absolutely. Anger management for sure. And one of the modalities that we're actually finding is really helpful is internal family systems, or IFS.
Yeah.
It's really popular right now, but it works really well with people who have done harm, because we can actually part out the parts, meaning you're not all bad. And that's one thing in the field, is it's very binary. There's the victim and there's the perpetrator. There's a good person and there's the bad person. We as people are a lot more complex than that. And so, really helping the person see you're not all bad, and how do we help those parts that are holding pain and anger and weaponizing things to actually mature and evolve. So, IFS has been a huge asset for us.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds amazing. Is there like is it a cost? Is it something that insurance covers? How many people do you have at once? Like, give us some of the details of that.
Yes. So it's currently a pilot program. It's called RAFT, Restorative Action for Family Transformation. And it is free. All of our services are free, and we wanted to make sure that this service was free as well, because we want the least amount of barriers for people coming in and accessing help.
That is
We do.
amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes, we have 6 beds right now, but the demand is increasing, so we are looking for a bigger place. to keep adding beds because we anticipate this program is going to be really successful. We are
Yeah.
also working with a researcher from University of San Jose out here in California who is actually going to do academic research and publish it. In about the next 18 months, we will have actual academic data on this.
Wow, this is so exciting. Someone had asked a little bit earlier about how to present something like this to family court. I mean, we work with clients, and one of the
Yes,
things we focus on is why are you in court? What relief are you requesting? If
yes,
someone were to say, instead of just anger management classes, which is a standard thing,
right,
parenting classes, anger management, but
right.
this type of thing, how would someone go about presenting it to family court judge?
Yes. So, what you would be looking for is a restorative, you would be asking for a restorative justice option. So, that's what RAFT really is under the umbrella of. Again, RAFT is a pilot program. Our hope through the academic research is that we can bring this into the legal system and say, look, this is an evidence-based practice. We want this to be an option when people are looking for solutions in court. But it is under the restorative justice umbrella, and you can request that.
Oh my gosh, so exciting. I mean, you're just in California now?
We are just in California now. We do have hopes to expand over the next 12 months.
Yeah, we need you to be everywhere. I'm thinking specifically
Yes.
of our couples who are still in the same home, and
Yes.
it's unbearable for both
Yes.
of them. And
Yes.
it's unsafe, and to know that there's a place to send one person who's can get the help that they need, or at least try,
Yeah.
would just bring so much peace to families, because it
Yes.
would reduce the level of conflict, especially as they're going through the
Absolutely.
family court system, which sometimes inflames conflict.
Absolutely. We know that when conflict is rising, especially in the domestic violence world, things the type of violence increases, the volatility increases, and what we want to do ideally is we want to get there in the beginning so
Hmm.
that we can diffuse it, so that we are not looking at rates of people's financial lives being completely destroyed, or all the way through the lethality of domestic violence. You made a really good point, which is why I went down this journey when I was sitting in working at the domestic violence shelter, and I was reflecting on my own DV experience. I was seeing different women come in with the same abuser. And I thought, wait a second, how many times is one abuser, mine in particular, going to harm somebody? And
Hmm.
what the heck are we doing to stop this? And that is the premise of this. We unfortunately will probably always need victim services, and we will be there 100%. But we also have to go to the person who's doing harm.
Yeah, yeah, such an amazing idea. Yeah, I know you're going to be everywhere. It's just
I
how
hope
long is it going
so.
to
I
take?
hope so. We do need people to advocate for this, and we do need people to get involved, in ways of looking at how can they bring this into their community, how can they
Hmm.
speak to their family courts about this option. The more people are talking about it, the more awareness that we can bring.
Ah, so great. All right, let's talk a little bit about not just this community, which is amazing and
Yeah,
fantasy right now for most of
yeah,
us, but
yeah.
there's other communities that people are parts of, and sometimes those communities are not healthy. Can you talk about
Yes.
some red flags to know, like, this is not a good thing for me and or my family, because I
Yeah.
feel like it's making things worse?
Yes. I can think of one community in general where I feel like the red flag was there, and I was kind of like, oh, well, I'll still try it. And that's when there's a very rigid way in which they want you to do things. Like, not every survivor or every person's journey is unique. It is, okay, if you're going to heal from this, this is how, these are the steps, and this is the rigid way that we're expecting you to heal and the process. That's a huge red flag for me.
You pause for one
There can
second. You know what that makes me think of? That's the
Yes.
same dynamic in an abusive relationship.
Yes.
I'm going to
Yes.
tell you what's right and you're going to do it.
Yes. Correct. Yep. So, I mean, you just summed it up beautifully there. Is if you're seeing some of the same kind of patterns or wording as, you're feeling, wait a second, I don't have autonomy in my decisions on what my journey looks like, that's a huge red flag.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so now to the next part is, so that's bad. What's some positive things? If someone's looking for a community, whether it's a victim, I'll just focus on victims here because that's what we deal with the most. But what is what can we look for that's good in a community?
Yes. Um, I think the biggest thing, and I'm going on my experience of like what was really helpful and what I hear with other people, um, we all could use a lot more empathy when
Mm.
we're going through probably the hardest times in our lives, and especially nowadays. And so when you are brought into a community and they are able to listen with a lot of empathy, I feel like that is like a green flag. That is going to be a place where healing really gets to be rooted in the work.
Yeah, so I'm going to toot my own horn a little tiny bit because I have to. That's
Yes.
something that we value so much. And we have a weekly legal abuse support group. And I think I told you this before, but for people who don't know, we actually do something very strange in the domestic violence space. And that's we combine our male and female clients together because we want them to develop empathy and understand that abuse is a human problem. It's not a gender problem. And in that group, I've seen amazing things happen between men and women. We also have some same-sex couples. So it's important, especially for women who are often characterized as victim and men as abuser, to hear the voices of men talking about the same fears that they have, whether it's being afraid of confronting their former partner in person, getting really jittery in court, opening up communications from their ex and being terrified about what's going to happen. They're going to take my kids away. Both men and women fear that all the time. So I completely agree with you. I think empathy really validates people's experience and helps them heal. I know in our group, and I tell our clients if they're going to find another group, it's probably not a good idea to keep cycling around the trauma and talking about how things have to
Correct.
change when there's really not much that you can do to make a huge thing change. I think we see things from a bottom-up perspective, that there's a
Yeah.
lot of things you can do to be persuasive and win your own case. And you can educate a judge through your own testimony, which I've had the pleasure of doing multiple times. And so for people to not feel as powerless, and groups that emphasize your powerlessness are, to me, a bit of a red flag.
Absolutely. And you hit on, a point of like reliving the trauma. Sometimes, people need to walk through their narrative. And I really think that needs to be in a contained setting with a professional who can help, that be a positive experience. But when we sit in the trauma, we relive it in our body. And so, that's another thing, to really pay attention to, of, we want to look at how do we move forward.
Yeah, I was just interviewing a psychologist last week, and they were saying that if you imagine your brain as like having grooves, and the more time that you keep repeating the same thing, it's like a
Yes.
marble. It doesn't just
Yes.
keep your trauma; it makes it worse.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's exactly what you're describing.
Yeah. We say in the field, what fires together wires together. So if
Mm.
you are constantly ruminating and sitting in the, trauma, that's firing in your brain, and that wires really strongly together. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for victims, we don't want them to do what we call live in the victimhood. And live in the victimhood, I'm accrediting that to an attorney friend of mine in Canada named David Morneau. He said, I can't stand working with people, and neither can we, who just live in the victimhood. Like everything is about the terrible things that happen to them, and they can't reflect or have accountability either on that things are complex. Not to
Correct.
blame anyone, but things are complex, and there's a lot of ways to tackle some of these issues rather than just thinking, I can't do anything. This is just the way things are,
Absolutely.
and I'm paralyzed.
Yeah. mean, part of the healing process is taking your power back, right? Taking your autonomy and ability to make decisions and move through the world. It can be very empowering, and moving from, you know, victimhood to that is definitely a journey, and we should all be helping, you know, encourage people.
Yeah. So speaking of that, how can people find you, Sophora?
Yes. So there are a couple of ways. On Instagram, Sophora_Acheson. If you are interested in, you know, learning more about restorative pathways, it's restorativepathways.org. I do coaching around the country for people who are on the destructive side of their relationship, and really looking to move towards that. And then we also help organizations open up RAFT programs.
That's amazing. Well, that's great because I know someone had asked earlier, how can I help? How can I get involved?
Yeah.
So I hope that
Please
a
reach
lot of,
out.
yes, I hope a lot of people hear this. And if not live, the recording will be posted and they'll find you and start getting this going in all of our communities, because domestic violence is one of the top crimes around the world. So this is such a creative, impactful way to start solving it from the bottom up.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming on again, and I'm glad that Instagram worked.
Yes.
All right, we will
Thank you
definitely
so
stay in touch.
much.
You're welcome. All right, take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.